Tonight, joining me from Melbourne, the Herald Sun's Terry McCrann, and in Sydney, the Australian's economics editor, Adam Creighton. Well, I know they hate coal, Terry McCrann, but I'm surprised they hate gas almost as much. What did you make of the PM's announcement yesterday?
Well, I'm conflicted on this point, Peter, because I think that what we saw from Scott Morrison yesterday was a bit of a thought bubble, threatening to build a gas-fired power station unless the industry came to the party in terms of building reliable, sensible power generation. Just to comment on Mr. Burns' statement, I don't know that we're going to be driving towards a renewables future, maybe walking or riding a bicycle perhaps, but we're certainly not going to be driving, and it's not going to be a battery-powered car unless we have coal-fired power stations, nuclear power stations or gas-fired power stations to actually provide the power. Having said that, we do need a gas-fired power station to provide some of the foundation of a sensible, sane power generation future into the industry into the future. But we also need coal and we need nuclear.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, the government says that they will intervene in the market, the energy market, and they'll build this new power station if private sector investment fails to turn up by April. Now, it's angered the energy market. The Australian Energy Council Chief Executive Sarah McNamara says there's nothing to warrant, she says, this kind of interventionist approach, and there are already mechanisms in place to address any shortfall identified. Now, I think she needs to wake up. I mean, this is not a pure market. She's not an economist, I might add. I know her.
That's true.
It's the most interfered with, most distorted market we have in this country, and the days of her mob making big profits from taxpayers and subsidies, that's what's got us into this mess, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think that's right. I think the idea of the free market in the energy sector is really quite ridiculous. I mean, the reality was when it was heavily influenced by government or controlled by government, power was much, much cheaper than it is now. So that doesn't necessarily mean that having a lot of government involvement is a bad thing in this sector. We've got the situation where there are three large players and they all cheer on higher prices. They don't want more supply. So I think the government does have to get involved. Where I think the government's gone wrong with this is choosing to build a gas power station in an area that is filled with coal, with some of the richest coal reserves in the world, in the Hunter Valley, and the idea that we're going to get cheap gas, I just think is a bit fanciful. It's the cost of extraction in Australia is just so much more expensive than it is in the US, say. It's about twice as expensive. So to have a gas plant, I think, is going to bake in much higher power prices because it will have to be used quite a lot. When it's not windy and when it's not sunny, this new power station will have to be turned on a lot, and it's going to be very expensive to run.
I know, but the private players are all making money hand over fist by shutting down our base load, and we say we want manufacturing back, so, we've got to do something. We can't keep going around
with this plant.
On this issue. I know, it's crazy. Talk to me about the border closures. You've made a lot of comment about the costs. There's obviously now this High Court battle, but we won't know probably until the end of the year. Now, this is getting madder by the minute, isn't it, in terms of the cost of the economy?
Yeah, well, certainly I just tried to work out the cost just for two borders, the New South Wales and Victoria border and the Queensland and New South Wales border. It's at least $200 million a week, just back of the envelope. But, the bigger problem here is the High Court has known about this case since the 25th of May when it was filed by Clive Palmer, and it said that it's not going to hear the case until the 3rd of November, which is almost 6 months. And that's just not acceptable, I think, really. I mean, this is one of the most important issues facing the country right now. I mean, it is potentially unconstitutional to close these borders for so long, and the High Court's chosen not to hear it and instead to hear some immigration, largely some immigration matters kind of over the course of this month and also next month. So I just think it's very disappointing that we're not going to know the result to this. And of course it's so bad for the economy, but not just in a financial sense. That's one of the things I've been trying to stress. It's just also the heartache for families involved who live on these borders.
Surely, Peter, if I can add, this is what the High Court is supposed to be about, settling fundamental constitutional questions, not just churning its way through these tedious, repetitive refugee-type cases. And, this is where the High Court should be focused. It's outrageous that it's not resolving this issue until the end of the year.
Now, I might say to my viewers, it's September in Melbourne, and Terry McCrann's in Melbourne with me, and he's got the fire on, right? The fire on. Now, Daniel Andrews, his solution for restaurants, if they open, if, fingers crossed, by the end of November, is to have everybody sitting outside. And of course, you know, Melbourne can be lovely one minute and you can have a fire on in December, let's be honest. That money that was announced the other day for business, this so-called $3 billion, it's funny money, Terry McCrann, because if you look into it, it's a whole lot of deferral of payroll tax. Now, these businesses are closed. They're not paying payroll tax. There's only about $300 million in there of real money.
Exactly. The biggest item, as you say, was the deferral of payroll tax, which acts as a double whack because it's not forgiven, it's not applied, but they'll get a double dose of payroll tax precisely when they're trying to get their head back above water, if and when Victoria ever opens up into 2021.
I tell you what, we're numerate, they're not, but we've picked that up, and business are incredibly angry. Adam Creighton, Terry McCrann, thank you as always for your time.
Thank you, Peter.